Another big day here in Canberra and for the nation. Let's bring in our political editor, Andrew Clennell, as we look at the impact right across the country. The government has announced, well now, they say 10% of GDP in terms of the economic response, but they've got a buffer in there now, after negotiations with Labor, an extra $40 billion, which can be spent before Parliament comes back. So this is an envelope that's going to be approved by Parliament to say if they need it, they can spend it.
This is an interesting development, Kieran. So the opposition and government have come to an arrangement where a $1.2 billion contingency fund that the Finance Minister Matthias Cormann has, where you could put out some emergency funding, say for health supplies or even economic measures, can be spent without legislation. Is $1.2 billion has been ratcheted up in the legislation going before Parliament to $40 billion. So that would prevent, you know, another quick stimulus package coming. You could just go and do that. The Finance Minister could sign off on it. Now, it's my understanding from sources that the government actually went to the opposition, suggested they raise the $1.2 billion contingency to $20 billion, and the opposition said, why not $40 billion? Because so serious things are.
So the government said to Labor, let's get this $20 billion window, and Labor has said, no, go $40 billion.
Go 40. And there's some kind of caveats on it. It must be only in an emergency, not for new stuff, and by agreement. So there would have to be bipartisan agreement, but it stops all these people coming in here. And frankly, after 4 MPs are infected, that might be a good thing. I mean, that's a crazy sort of situation we're in. I mean, you'd hate to see Parliament stop at such an important part of our democracy.
So it's already been $66 billion at the weekend, yesterday, and now another $40 billion has been agreed to by both parties. That at least is encouraging that they're working constructively in that sense.
Well, they need to for the nation, don't they? And that's why it's good that even though Labor's moving amendments, they're promising to get this stimulus package through without too much opposition. If the government knocks down the amendments, I think they just, or doesn't accept it, even if the Senate amends it, I think they'll just let it through. But look, I wanted to talk a bit about this health situation we're in and pull up the advice, if I can, from the health advice that we've had. Which says that even though we're in a serious situation with the spread of this thing, we've got a really low percentage of tests coming back positive. The Prime Minister keeps talking about this, and it's important to realise that we're not in an Italy-type situation. So this health advice from the Chief Medical Officers, Kieran, it says that we now have 1,000 cases and we are clearly concerned at the rate of rise in cases and potential trajectory. That's bad news, but it's worth, and that's justifying the pubs and restaurants closures, by the way. There's a bit of a super spread. But it is worth noting that the situation with our first 1,000 is somewhat different to other countries such as Italy and the USA when they were at 1,000. So more than half our cases are imported from overseas or direct contacts. We have one of the lowest COVID-19 test positivity rates in the world, 0.9% compared to USA 13%, UK 5% and even Republic of Korea 3%. We've had 7 deaths, all in people aged 75 or over, and so far less than 20 people have needed ICU treatment. Now, it does go on to say, this medical advice, however, despite the above, the recent rapid influx in imported cases and associated chains of transmission, including cruise ships, this horrible Ruby Princess situation, and super spreader events, the wedding in Stamble Tops, Andrew Bragg, the Senator gets it, then Rex Patrick on the committee gets it, means we do need to do more now. We're seeing evidence of non-compliance with the social distancing measures and people are not taking this seriously. So that's why they've gone to shut the pubs and the restaurants, and that's why we've had this debate on schools. And that looks like it's going to entrench itself somewhat for a while.
One of the issues, the schools thing has been messy, no doubt, but I think most Australians and parents like us would recognise that this is a pandemic the likes of which none of us have seen. And so while the states have been pushing in one direction certain things, still I would argue that this National Cabinet is a success. It is the way that the Prime Minister, it was a smart move to do it. And I know that it's been a bit messy at times with states and so on pushing in one direction, but I just don't think we should overstate that hiccup or messiness in the face of what is a fluid, difficult, unprecedented, I say that word again, but but really, you know, there is no precedent for this for policymakers. So my point is there's still this foundation of the National Cabinet should remain because it's better to have all of the premiers and state and territory leaders there with the Prime Minister than to not have them. To have them at least at the table. They might disagree from time to time, Andrew, like they have on schools, but I think at the end of the day we get the better outcome as a result.
I think you make some very good points, and the point you keep making about it being fluid, I think it's a time we can actually both sides of politics and the federal and state authorities can forgive each other for a few mistakes because they're under a lot of pressure. They're making, with the virus spreading so rapidly, they're making decisions in quick time. They're not going to get every decision right, and I think they should even admit that.
It's impossible.
If we go into a blame game, where are we at? Where's the public at? So there's no room for grudges here. On either side, it has to be said. You've got this federal-state niggle, and it's just, it's less than ideal. And, you know, let's have a look.
They've got to rise above it.
Yeah.